in its mouth. And this was right on Deer Creek. I seen this grass laying down. I said, it's gonna be a perfect place for a shot. So this is the one I use most of the time for when I'm talking about shad. Okay, flies. I've used my hickory shad fly since I was 16 years old, and I've never changed it. And the reason I use these red and yellows is because Jack Bark down in Glen Burnie wanted me to go shad fishing with him, and I didn't know anything about shad fishing. So I said, "What do you use?" He said, "Shad darts." And the only difference was that they were just fancy colored. So I went home and did a red and yellow, just like a shad dart, and that's the ball game. That's all I've ever used. The only thing I ever changed is the body. It's either silver or gold. And for some reason, during the day, sometimes you got to switch, but I don't know why, but it happens. For Rich, you can see my tail. I felt self-conscious one time about that. So now I'm doing it back with all my flies. The white shad fly the same way. I always leave that little trailer. But of all the combinations, there's oranges and there's pearls, but the chartreuse and red for some reason seems to be best. And a strange thing about shad in these waters, in Deer Creek, they hit this, they won't hit this. But in the Susquehanna River itself, I use this all day, catch shad, both whites and hickories. But I can't catch a hickory in Deer Creek with it. I guess it's just too big. But one of them little strange things.
And my foot's frozen.
Huh? The shad fishing is all about location, just like a reelder. It's all about where you set up to catch these things. That's the real secret. And we're gonna refer to this shot more than once. This is right at the pumping station on Deer Creek, and we're gonna talk about this actually this shot right here down the road here. But if you don't know much difference between them, here's the biggest difference. Other than white shad is much larger. I mean, they can go up to about 8 pounds. A hickory's probably never pushes 2. But the hickory's jaws actually extend out past their top of their lip, where the white shad are in line. And you can see the 2 flies, the ones that we just talked about.
Joe, is that white shad? There's a black line under its eye, kind of like. Well, anyway, is that a characteristic? Here? Yeah.
It might be. I've never. We'll look at a couple more slides. Maybe we'll pick that up. But the main thing is the lips.
Yeah.
Just absolutely no question. It's the lips. Sometimes when the shad start running in the creeks, usually the females come up first before the males. So you got some really big fish coming in, and they might push that 2 pounds. I don't know, but they'd be very, very close to it. But yeah, the real feature is right here. And if you notice, they got a dark dot behind their gill cover, which I don't think the whites carry that. So, I mean, when this fish is really small, it looks very much like a herring. Okay, these are the two main techniques to catch them. Speed and location are the 2 main elements. Okay, I tell people all the time, don't go to Deer Creek and go trout fishing. Don't mend down, don't mend upstream and try to slow it up. You actually want to mend downstream and make it go faster and faster and faster. What these fish are laying in a certain location. What you want is that fly to sweep in front of their face, so they're coming right across the front of their face, and that instinct they'll go hit it. So you want more speed. You don't want it to go down. You're not nymphing. You're using a streamer, and you want it to really go fast. And the big thing, bend down your hook barbs. When you go, these fish are acrobatic. And they're also got hard mouths. They're around the side of the mouths pretty hard. So sometimes the hook is just sitting there. If you don't bend the barb down, you will have it in your hand when you reach down to grab the fish. I was on Deer Creek one time, and I had the bend of the hook go into my hand 4 times during the day, but it's a number 8 hook, pulls right out. So, but without a barb, so it's not a problem. Yeah, bend that barb, you know. Equipment for the hickories, 3 to 5 weights. I got a 10-foot 3 weight I use all the time. And for me, the big key is using a 5-foot sink tip with a 3 or 4 foot tippet, tapered about down to 6 pounds. So that's, what's that, 4X? Yeah, I think 4X. And shad flies, you know, you can tie anything you want, but I'm using a red and white hickory fly with either a gold or silver tinsel. When we first started doing this years ago, I don't know if I ever told you the history about how we got in to be able to fish for shad again, but Dale Weinrich was head of the shad restoration there, and he wanted to get people to fish for him and see if they could handle catch and release. So he gave 7 letters to of us. 4 of us were outdoor writers. I had the shop and 2 other guys that had a lot of experience on Deer Creek and Susquehanna. And so we went up there. We were allowed to fish for them, and they had a tanker truck, and they would come and pick up the fish that we hooked and put them in a tanker truck. And they lost 1 fish during the whole campaign, which was a couple of weeks. And the fish that they lost is because they didn't put the cover on top and it jumped out. So that's why we got a catch and release fishery now, because of that. So, white shad, go to 7 or 8. These guys stay pretty close to the bottom. So I use a 250 or 300 teeny line. And again, I taper down to 20 pound, you know, that it's nothing to worry about the tippet for these things. And again, I'm back to my 1/0 hook. And like I said, for some reason, the hickory shad in the river will hit that 1 hook all the time, and it won't hit the other. I don't know. Big difference to this is the hickory, and these are whites. And Gary, that dot is still there. So, yep, it's the mouth. You can see that mouth's closed.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yep. But the whites are much bigger. I mean, they can go up to as much as 8 pounds. And
Excuse me, Joe, could you back up? I'm trying to write down. There we go. Thank you. I'm gonna write this down here.
okay. Take a picture with your phone.
I do it the old fashioned way.
I see people do that a lot nowadays. When I was doing, when you could go really do a real seminar, you see people with their cameras shooting it. I mean, their phones shooting at the screen.
Yeah, Dennis has got to use a quill pen and ink, so he's
Yeah. A quill? Is it a quill?
quill pen, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got a couple of segments cut out of it for some flies, though.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's
I'm
red
impressed.
Marabou today, I think.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. I got it.
All right.
I'm still making, those don't go away.
So you can see there's a big difference in size. I mean, you know, you'll know when you hook one of these boys. They don't tend to jump. Hickories will jump and do all kinds of things. They're the poor man's tarpon. But these guys just are bulldogs and powerful, you know, just like the little shad is. This is Deer Creek. I just took a couple shots. This is our Bill May, our member here. So I got him in there. And I think I probably shot 100 shots that day, trying to get all kinds of different shots of these things. And this one's the one I use. So again, you know, same fly, but you know, this is all bony, really hard. I mean, it's actually hard to lip these things. It's better just to grab them up, you know, on the side, because it's hard to lip that fish, you know, the way, and he's still kind of delicate, you know, at that point. But again, it's a great fish for this time of year. This I actually have from my book. What I was showing is where these fish would lay, and I'm going to show you how to fish it in a second. But they do the runs They're not generally in shallow water. If you see fish up in here, they're usually herring and not shad yeah, hickory shad. The hickory shad are in the lanes. Same way here. This is actually the bend at the bend pool. And this is how these fish come up. And I'm going to show you a little later how they negotiate all the way up through there. But this is where you want to fish. You want to fish that lane. And I'm going to show you eventually how to fish it really thorough, that you can catch fish from here down to here if they're in that whole lane. So you're always looking for, where the faster water is running, because this is how they're coming up the rivers. Okay. This is actually up in the Delaware, and this is for white shad, and they're in these big, deep, running fast pools. And once you get up in them, you got to kind of look to see where that faster water is. And usually the water's clear enough, you can see where the rocks are and where the fast water is. So it's not bad. One strange thing about, it's not strange, but on the Delaware, at the top end of the Delaware, these white shad are coming up there and they're actually nymphing. And you can catch them with a beadhead hare's ear all day long, which is an interesting thing. You don't think that these guys are feeding, but they do feed. Okay, again, this is near the bend pool.
But that's not the case in the Susquehanna.
I've never done it in the Susquehanna. I've always used my flies, and I never have done the others, but I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, what I noticed the first time up in Delaware is I was fishing a spring coming out of the river, and you could tell it was a spring because there was all this green vegetation on the bottom, which meant that all these minerals are coming out of the ground. And there was a pile of shad, white shad, hanging down the bottom. And every once in a while, I'd see one just pull out into the fast current and eat something and go back. And I said, man, they got to be nymphing. And I happen to have gold-ribbed, soft hackle, nymphs with me, and I put them out and just start wiping them out. I mean, it was almost every cast. You'd see one break out of the pile and go eat it. So, yeah, they're up there eating. But again, the current's running from this point to this point, so it's left to right. But that's the run that these fish are coming into. They're not coming up in here. They're not coming up in there. They're coming right up through that run. Where they're staging at this run can be, that's where you got to find them. And I'm going to tell you how to do that, because they could be here. They could be right here. They could be right next to this rock, hanging. But I'm going to tell you how to cover all this water at one time. Okay. To do it, you got to be very methodical with your cast and dissect the water. This water, you can see, I'm going to be staging, I'm going to say right here. Okay. So you got fast water right here. You got fast water coming down through here, and you got fast water coming down through here. You're not going to be able to reach this until you move out farther. But let's say these fish are right here. They're coming down, they're coming up this lane, going upriver. Okay. Because they're going to go up through these chutes. I mean, that's exactly where they're going to go. So what you want to do, if you don't know where they're lying on here, what you want to do is you want to stay here, make your cast up here. I make my first cast as far as I can cast. So I might cast all the way over here and then let it belly all the way out. And what happens is it's coming down through here, the belly's starting to pick up speed. Remember, I want it to pick up speed. So, I'm casting it downstream or across and down. So it actually picks up speed, and all of a sudden it'll whip right here. Okay. And if those shad are sitting right here, that's where that's the spot. That's where they're at. Okay. So you keep making that same cast over and over and over. Okay. Let's say that you didn't get anything on that. What I do is I reach up to my first stripping guide and pull that much line in and make the next cast. So now I'm hitting right here, but the cast is going to be shorter because the line's shorter, and it's going to stop here. Okay. And you keep doing that until you find the fish. So I keep reaching up, grabbing my next to my stripping guide, bringing that much line back, make the next cast, and do it until I cover every bit of this water by throwing these arcs in it. And you'll find during the day, I used to find this at the bend pool, you know, I might catch them right up here first, and then all of a sudden they'll stop. And I don't know if because we've disturbed them enough, and they'll move on down. So now you got to start the whole routine over to find where those fish are hanging. But once you do, you can catch them all day. I was at Stafford Bridge one day. I caught 141 shad in one day. And that was from 5:30 in the morning to 11. I quit and went home. Or actually went back to the shop at that point. But anyhow, if you understand what I'm saying, you want to make that fly. When I make that cast, the line's in the air, I actually swing it downstream. So now I got a bow in the line. So this thing really whips fast. And when it does, it comes around that turn, just like when you're nymphing, you know, at the end of your cast, you know, your trout usually hits it, and it's because it's, you know, it sees it going away. And the same thing, these shad, that little thin fly comes in front of their face and they whack at it. So, but that's how you work waters. If this was the Deer Creek and this was the end, obviously I'd cast all the way over there and work this whole body of water by doing the exact thing over and over and over and over. And
So Jim, this is Jim. I just want to ask you, so I take it they're not real line shy with the line going over their head. You can
no, yeah, they got it. You know, I've done all kind of articles about this, you know, about like, you know, can you imagine everything that drifts down through this current? I mean, there's leaves, there's twigs, there's branches, there's spider webs, every debris of stuff is coming down there.
Okay.
If that spooked fish, they would never eat. You know, they'd all died off years ago, you know, if they were that finicky. No, it doesn't bother them. You know, it really doesn't. You know, that fly line's just another piece of reed or something that's drifting down current. But that sink tip is the really key as you're getting it down. I don't like split shot. I don't use them at, you know, that I don't like that the way split shot kind of, you know, you got the hand over your fist over fist and kind of cartwheels out on the water. I just don't use it. I use a sink tip, and you can buy them. If we ever get together, we're going to make them because I got a bunch of lines set for us. So we'll get all that done down the road. But
Hey, Joe, it looks like you're in your example you're giving us here, you're casting upstream.
I'm casting, I'm going to cast from here up here. But what I did while the line's still in the air, I throw my rod tip down. So I've actually made a downstream mend. And that meant that as soon as this fly hit right here, you know, it picked up speed.
I'm there. Oh, I got it. I think. Okay,
You might want to mute that one.
gotcha. Nobody.
But anyhow, you know, I make this cast and I throw a loop downstream. So that means that fly, as soon as it hits the water, with that sink tip is starting to pick up speed. And I use that all the way down. Another thing that I failed to mention, once I threw that line out and that rod tip, let's say my rod tip setting right here, I don't move it. You leave it right there and let the whole line belly out. Because if you bring it and if you take your rod tip and follow it down, you've slowed the fly up, and you want to keep it going faster and faster the whole time. So, you know, when you make that cast, you can throw a loop downstream if you want. You don't have to, but I do. And then just leave the rod tip right there. Don't move it, and let it belly out, and then shorten it up, make the next cast so it bellies out, and make the next cast, and so on all the way up. That's how you really fish water. That, I mean, I've been in Deer Creek. I usually get there at noon. I don't even get there early. And these guys were coming out of the pool and said, "How'd you do?" And they said, "Oh, I caught a couple." And so I went down to the pool, to the bend pool, and started doing my routine. And I start just whacking shad over and over and over and over. And finally, one of the guys said, "I think I hear your phone ringing. Won't you come up and pick it up?" They had no concept what I was doing, and you know, and that's why I'm here, to try to educate you how to work water and do really well.
Hey, Joe, is there when I fish there, I've always fished down and across, trying to get velocity on flies and stuff. But you like this upstream.
Well,
Bill?
you know, it doesn't really have to be upstream, but it doesn't have to be downstream either. If anything, go perpendicular. You want that fly to pick up speed immediately that you can. Let me go back to one of them here. Nope, one wrong way. Okay. All right. I fish this pool all the time. This is Deer Creek. Okay, this is the bend pool. And right up in here is where I stand, back here a ways. And I make a cast all the way to that shoreline and let it drift down as far as it can drift on that turn. Okay, then I make another, you know, I pick it back up, make another cast. So it loops here and it loops here and loops here and loops here. I've caught fish right at my feet. But they could be here, they could be here,
Yeah.
but doing what I'm telling you, if you make that cast, let the line just belly out, leave your rod tip right where you casted it. Don't move it. Don't follow it down. You're not trout fishing. You want it to stay and go as fast as it can. So by doing that, I mean, you know, I see guys that fish straight upstream. Do they catch fish? Yeah, they catch fish. But you'll catch a hell of a lot more doing what I'm doing, you know, over a period of time. So you want that fly to just go right in front of their face. So it's perpendicular to their face. You know, that's what you want. So, you know, I take my little 3-weight and I cast up here and let it run all the way down and let it flip. Then I'll pick it back up, shorten it up, go here, go here, go here, go here and here until it's right at my feet again. And then I start all over. Sometimes you can see flashes, so you know basically where the fish are. If you see the flash, well, obviously try to get your fly to twist into that spot. Yeah, that's the real secret. Let's go back to where I was here again. Same way here. If I was standing over here, I'm going to make that cast probably right here at this rock, and then let it float down and turn. And then I would shorten it up and shorten it up and shorten it up until I'm fishing right here again. And if I'm catching fish and I stop, I go right on, go all the way down here, make a cast here and let it go all the way down and belly down there. So it's all about location. I mean, there's just absolutely nothing more than location and getting your fly in front of their face perpendicular. Okay, I said I was going to refer back to this shot again. There's only one person fishing this hole right, and that's the guy right here. These guys have no chance of catching many fish because what the fish do, let me go to another picture. What the fish do, they don't come up this run because this is all shallow. What they do is they come up this run. Well, when these fish come up out of this run, this is the bend pool. Okay, they come up, they go right out through here, and they go right there where this guy's in. The fish go right by this guy's legs. He'll never catch one because there are fish here occasionally, but the big school is coming up right next to this rock, and then it swings over and goes right up this way. So this guy is, with his line, is the only one that I would say is in the right spot because he's going to be able to cast across current and letting it sweep right there in that hole where these fish are coming up at. This guy has no shot at it at all. I mean, he's just wasting his time. And this guy's too short. He can't reach all this. So it's about location. I mean, obviously these guys have never shad fished, you know, because they don't understand what's happening. But this guy is actually in the water. I was fishing Stafford Bridge one time, and there was like 7 of us in a row, and this guy from Pennsylvania was down below me, and I'm catching shad, and they're jumping in his face. And I said, I hope this don't offend you. I said, why don't you step back a couple steps and make the same cast? And he stepped back a couple steps and start catching shad because he was standing where they were. So, yeah. So this is important. If you know, this rock, the guys that fish Deer Creek know this rock. People get up on it all the time and they make a cast and they come down. Well, that's because this is where the fish are starting to come in. But then they come right up past that rock and right on up and turn, and then they go upriver. And you can go upriver and fish for shad for, geez, at least a mile and a half more up that way. Somebody asked me, you know, are there shad farther up the river? And I said, they just travel 2,000 miles, a mile and a half, not going to bother them at all. again, it's good fishing. The water, it's usually chilly. I would say start, they used to always say, oh, when the dogwoods bloom, that's when the shad are in the creeks. If you waited for that, you probably missed a week or so of shad fishing. Temperature is the real factor, and daylight, of course. So, if we got high water or higher water, that's good. The shad will come into Deer Creek. When it's real low, they don't come in. I mean, they might not come in for the whole year, and they'll just spawn outside. So, but this is probably, I don't know where this one is. Probably upriver a little bit. Like I said, the whites, they're in the river, and so are the hickory shad. I launch my kayak. I don't even go to Deer Creek anymore. I launch my kayak over at 222. If you're going down 222, like you're going to Port Deposit, there's, before you make a real hard turn left to go underneath the railroad track, well, if you'll see a dirt road in front of you, it goes across a little wooden bridge. If you go down there, at the end, there's a launching ramp, and you're just a little bit south of Deer Creek. So those hickory shad are all over that water down there. Long as Susquehanna is running water, not heavy water, but water, you can catch them. And what you do is you anchor in the eddy, someplace where you can cast to that fast water. Those fish aren't in the eddies, so. But you can see the white shad is much, much bigger fish. So like I said, the hickories are the poor man's tarpon. They're a great fish to fish for. This is right up top of the bend pool, and they are fun.
Joe, that bend pool you're talking about, is that the one at the pumping station?
Yeah, that's right at the pumping station. Yeah. My shad book's still available as a PDF now. I do it on my website. So if you want it, I used to sell the book for $11.95. If you go through my website, it's 5 cents and $6 shipping. You're not shipping it, but I'm sending it to you as a PDF, and you can put it back together if you like. But so it's still available. All right, that's going to take care of that part. Now we're going to. Let's see, where am I at here? Let me get my screen back. Yeah, here we go. All right, so I know I went over it pretty fast, but the real thing is nothing but location, and you can go into a pool where those guys are fishing, and if they don't know how to fish for shad, you can go right next to them and catch shad. I mean, no problem. I was fishing this one pool. In fact, it was Stafford Bridge, and I'm not knocking the dickens out. It was in the afternoon, and I fished all the way until dark. And I went back to my truck to pack it up, and these 3 guys came over and asked me, "What fly are you using?" And I knew they didn't know how to shad fish because I could tell the way they were at trying to catch them. And I said, "I've been using this fly," and he said, "Could you sell me some?" So I think I sold him 6, and I kept 3. And I thought, I want to shad fish tomorrow morning. I knew this guy's going to be in the same spot that I am. So I got up an hour earlier, get down to the Stafford Bridge, and they're already in the water. And they'd been fishing sometime and way into the dark, and or early in the dark. And I just slowly put my waders on. I was watching this one guy. He wasn't catching anything, and he was trout fishing, and mending downstream and all this stuff. And but he was left-handed. So I said, I knew him, and so I walked out and I said, "John," I said, "You do any good?" He said, "Yeah, I caught one on the first cast. I haven't caught anymore." And I said, "You're left-handed and I'm right-handed. Do you mind if I stand right next to you?" And he said, "No." I made a cast, caught a shad, made a cast, caught a shad, made a cast, caught a shad. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm shad fishing." I said, "You've been trout fishing all the time." And I explained what to do with the line, and he started catching some fish. So yeah, it's totally against what you would do if you were trout fishing. I mean, speed is the real factor, and that fly coming perpendicular to their face is the key to make them bite. So in the big river, it's no different. If you go into Susquehanna, you just go up behind a rock where there's a nice flow and throw your anchor over the rock or do whatever you need to keep your boat there, and then just fish that fast water. When I'm fishing that fast water, it's a lot faster in Deer Creek, so I usually will go to a 7 weight, only because I need a little heavier weight, and I'll go to a teeny line. It's a 30-foot head, and with a 3-foot leader or something like that, and fish it. And you'll catch whites and hickories at the same time a lot of times. So there's other waters around.
So that's a full sinking line you're talking about?
It's got a 30-foot head. It's a teeny TS 250 for a 7 weight. And yeah, you need that because the current is running so fast. I mean, if they're running normal current, which is they supposed to release 5,000 CFS all the time, but you might be up there and are running 17. And I would suggest don't go up there if they're running more than 17. Then it just gets so fast that it's really tough. But anything under that, yeah, you could fish it. And the nice thing about the Susquehanna itself, you don't have all the crowd. So you can, I mean, there's all kinds of runs. You just find one, fish it. If you don't catch anything, you go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. They don't all just flock into Deer Creek. I mean, they run up to Rock Octorora. I don't know if there's any more. I used to fish the railroad bridge up there at Octorora. I don't know if you're allowed in there anymore. They might have it posted, but that's the first place I ever caught shad was in the Octorora. But you have that, and you can actually, with your kayak, you can paddle upstream and actually go up to the Octorora and fish the tailwaters of it. So, but you don't have to go that far. I mean, when you go in at that ramp I'm talking about on 222, you're just a little bit below Deer Creek. So you're right at Rock Run. If you guys know where Rock Run is, all you gotta do is paddle straight out, and you're right over there where all the shad are. So yeah, it's not a hard thing with the kayak to do. You don't have rapids to negotiate or anything. Maybe a little fast water here and there, but nothing more than that. So
So let's go ahead and open it up for questions. I've got about a half dozen, but let folks go ahead and ask their questions.
I know I didn't do that good a job.
So Joe, let me start off then. You said only 2 flies, one for hickories, one for Americans.
Right.
That's it, huh? And you can look at the shad box and see all these other suckers in there. So no other patterns other than the nymph, as you mentioned.
I don't. No, I never needed them. Again, it's more about location and that than anything else. I mean, will they hit a pink fly? Yeah, they'll hit a pink fly. I have a couple pink ones in my box, but I rarely will. I go to it. What I'll do first, if I'm fishing for hickories, I'll tie on maybe a gold body, and if I don't do anything with that, I'll switch to silver, and that's pretty much it. I can say a couple things that in the main river. I was fishing with a good buddy of mine that we fished shad all the time in the spring, and he was using a silver spoon, and he was knocking the hell out of shad. I couldn't catch a damn thing with mine, so I said, well, I'll go to a pearl white shad fly, and that didn't work. And for some reason, and I have no idea why this was in my shad box, but there was it was a bay anchovy, which is kind of basically all silver and such. So I put that bay anchovy on my fly rod and was catching one every cast. So why? I have no idea. I don't know what they were feeding on or what they were looking at. So if I'm not telling you go ahead and do all that, but that day, that fly worked, and I don't think I ever used it again. It was just that one day. But I do in my shad box, I do have a silver spoon, that I actually used to make small spoons. So I have taken that, but that if I've used it twice, that's all I've ever used it. I was up there one time and up in Deer Creek, and Bob Clouser came up and he wanted to photograph video of shad fishing. So I got into Ben pool and he got his camera and all that's all set up on the bank there. And I made a cast just to get my line out and I hooked the shad. He said, I'm not ready yet. So I said, don't worry, if I caught one on the first cast, there's plenty in here. So you know, we caught him and caught him and caught him and caught him. And then he got involved in it. Then we went upstream and we set up in another spot and did the same thing. I mean, just shad one after the other. So, but it was all location. It just getting that fly to turn in their face and casting straight. Now, Gary said something about casting upstream. If you cast it straight upstream, you'd probably waste most of your cast because you couldn't get it going fast enough, you know, so you'd have to mend downstream to get it to pick up speed, you know.
Hey, Joe, I was at Martinac State Park,
Yeah,
the Chop Tank in Watts.
right.
And as usual, I was fishing for perch, and as usual, I caught something else. I never catch what I'm going after. I always catch something else. But I ended up catching an American shad there. And I was really curious that I thought the hickories came up first.
They do, yeah. You sure it
And,
wasn't, you sure it wasn't a big female hickory?
Well, the guy next to me came over and I said, look, I know this isn't a perch. And we're both looking at it because I wanted to get it back in the water.
Right.
And it looked too small to be American shad, but there was no dot, you know, up by the gill plate or anything. So is it too early for American shad? To this day, I still don't know what it was.
Yeah, American shad usually don't start really running up in the rivers until late May into June.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so I would think it was one of the big female hickories, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, because they'd be the first ones to run. I've caught them in marshy hope.
Yeah.
Hickories. Yeah, I've caught them in marshy hope at times. You know, again, we were white perch fishing, and we found white hickory shad. You know, so we anchored up to where we could cast it to them, and
so you can have a hickory shad that doesn't have that.
Yeah, it has that dot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got that dot. Yeah, I didn't know if the whites did, but after I seen the pictures, yeah, they do. But I've always told them to tell by the lips. You know, that hickory's got that that underside jaw.
I forgot to look at the lips. I should have done that. I didn't.
That's the real key.
Anyway, he went back in because I knew it was some sort of shad. He went back.
Right.
Joe, can you picking up on Jim's point, can you talk about some other places to shad fish besides Octoramo and Deer Creek?
Well, you know, they're in all these waters. Like I said, Marshy Hope has them. I mean, you could go right down in Federalsburg and paddle upstream just a little bit. I mean, you're still in town. You probably got them. I know you got them there because I fished Marshy Hope before and had them. The Natticoke has them. The Chop Tank has them. You know, I mean, all those waters have them. You have to start. You got to think that you got to go as far upstream as you can possibly go. I mean, you could, like, if you did the Chop Tank, you'd go up to, what is it, Goldsboro? There's a ramp up here in Goldsboro, and you could probably start right there and move upstream a little bit and see.
Would they, on the Marshy Hope, Joe, would they go up? I mean, the Marshy Hope, you can launch in at Federalsburg off those ramps there,
Right.
And go upstream. You also cross the Marshy Hope way further upstream on 404. You know, it looks like an irrigation ditch up there, but
Yeah.
do they go up that far?
They'll go up all the way until they're ready to spawn, which, you know, they can keep doing that. I don't see. I know the canal you're talking about, you know, Marshy Hope. You know, I guess you would have to kind of, you know, find some spot along that maybe got a little hole in it or something that would hold those fish. Because I didn't ever fished it, so I don't know how channelized that thing is. So I really don't know, but yeah, they're in all those waters. I mean, the Potomac, you've heard of Fletcher's Landing. I mean, there you can catch whites and hickories and stripers all at the same time.
Does the level of light change the fishing at all, whether it's cloudy or sunny, whether they start running, not running, or anything like that? Or
I don't recall ever having one over the other. I don't think I've ever fished in a rain for them. But I'm sure it's been cloudy at times, you know. I mean, you know, a lot of people said that, you know, because shad's got really big eyes, you know, that it's a low light kind of fishery. So, you know, people go, you know, at dark 30 in the morning and then fish till noon and go home, and then they come back in the afternoon and fish till dark. I've been out there 11 o'clock at night still catching shad. So, you know, it's funny because all you see is kind of a little bit of white splash where they're splashing because you can't tell where they are. So you keep moving your arm around till you grab your fly line and bring them in. But I don't fish early in the morning anymore. I get up there at noon. Everybody's leaving and the fish are still there, you know. So yeah, I don't think the light is a big a factor. Once those fish are down underneath, you know, it's subdued anyhow. And as far as dirty water, if it's really dirty, yeah, it's tough because the fish can't see the fly. But I have fished it in high water. I fished it one time, Wayne Blattenberg, which is my shad buddy, and I went down to Stafford Bridge, and the water was going so fast, but it was clear, but it was so fast that somebody with hip boots couldn't even walk off the bank. They'd have been over their hip boots. And I said, you know, I got a 250 teeny on my 7-weight. I'm going to take that out there. He said, I got one too. So we went out and we just hammered these shad, you know, in that fast water with our what would be our river lines, right? And but people came over and they couldn't fish it. There was no way that you could fish. They couldn't get down to it and keep it, you know. And but so fast water, that's not a big factor. Dirty water is a factor, you know. But one thing about Deer Creek, it cleans up pretty fast. I mean, if you had a big rain, you know, if you went down 2 days afterwards or a day afterwards, you know, you'd probably be okay. They need enough water to come up. If it's real shallow, like when we had those droughts years ago, I mean, a few years ago, no shad ever come up. I mean, there was no water. I mean, they weren't going to run up, so they stayed at the mouth of Deer Creek and did whatever they do after that. But you know,
so last year, Joe, I was at Deer Creek, and there were these little fish jumping out of the water all over the place. So are those herring?
they're probably herring. They're probably herring,
okay.
Yeah. We've even caught carp way up there. You know, they ate our flies. You know, so rare, but they are. And we've actually caught some stripers at times. You know, especially later in the like anytime from, I would say anytime from guaranteed probably from April 15th to May 15th are going to be shad in that creek. In the river, they're probably there early April. And the reason I say that is that I always questioned, do these shad really run out in the ocean anymore? Because I've caught them, you know, in November, jigging for stripers down near the Chop Tank, you know, and the Honga River. So, and that was in November. So I don't know if these guys really go out to the ocean or not. If they do, they don't spend much time because, you know, they're here real early spring. They're in the river, but you know, another place you could go if you want to work at, you go to Lapidum, you know, where the ramp is in Lapidum.
Yeah.
And there, you got all those rocks and such. If you park up above the Lapidum ramp, there's some parking there you don't have to pay for. And you can go down there with a stripping basket and fish off those rocks and catch shad all day.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, so you don't need a boat.
It's also the water's not as much velocity down there. I mean, I'm a little nervous to take a kayak out up in the Susquehanna where, around Rock Creek or Deer Creek, but it wouldn't bother me to go out of Lapidum.
Yeah, Lapidum wouldn't be bad, and you can actually, if you go out of Lapidum and go up in towards the middle of the river and go up between the islands, and then going up to where you can see Rock Run, and go out that way, there's no vicious whitewater.
Okay.
You can do it. And if they're running too much water, it's just so laborious to try to do it. I wouldn't do it. But you can go out of what I was talking about near Point. I don't know why I can't always think about it, but off of 222. I mean, you can go out. There's a little island there, and you can go out right down anchored up behind that island, which you
that's
paddled a whopping 50 yards and catch shad. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Two other places I've caught shad. We're talking about places is the Upper Gunpowder.
Yep.
Right where was it Route 7 that crosses it or something like that?
Yeah.
Right. You could park there and go in, and there's some nice shad fishing there. And also on the Upper Patuxent, the Queen Anne's Bridge Road up in there, I've caught shad. So.
Right. Yeah, they're in a lot of places. I mean, yeah, they really are. I mean, again, I fish the river more than any place. So I can go in the river and I'll catch a striper. I catch a smallmouth is eating many times have eaten my white shad fly. So so catch a little bit of everything. And again, I don't have a crowd next to me. I'm enjoying my area all by myself. I can find that little hole and then just enjoy it and just relax. So yeah.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
do you ever put lead on your hickory shad fly to
No.
weight it down?
No.
No?
I always use a sink tip.
Oh, okay.
You could. I just, I mean, floating line is one thing. If you use the floating line and they're longer leader, you're going to have to weight the fly to get it down and keep it there. By going to a sink tip, you've already accomplished that. So yeah, if we can ever get together, outside, I don't know what the governor's done lately, if we can get together or not, but I got plenty of line for us to make 5 and 10 foot sink tips, and I'll show you the process, and you guys can go home and do it. So.
Yeah, I used a Rio Versatip, Joe. There's a type 3, a type 6.
I would do type 6. I would do the biggest. Yeah. I've always been I can always adjust my depth by how I cast.
Yeah.
So if I'm in the shallower water, I'll cast more across than down, so it doesn't sink so far down. But yeah, I like the heavier line, because if you got light line, you can't accomplish a lot of things that you'd want to do.
So if I was going to do that, Joe, you're saying use a type 6 tip?
I would, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that, Jim? A type 6? What is that?
It's a loop. You can make a loop-to-loop connection with this Rio Versatip. They sell it back, and it comes with an intermediate tip, type 3, which means it sinks at 3 inches a second. The type 6, which means it sinks at 6 inches a second. And then there's an intermediate tip. They give you 4 tips in this pack. The only problem with it is it's a loop-to-loop connection with your existing floating line. So if you get, as usual, if you get that loop-to-loop connection inside your guide, it doesn't cast all that well.
Yeah.
No.
What is that? Tell me, what is that called again?
It's the Rio Versatip, VERSI-tip. And they come in different types. And when I bought it, they gave you 4 of them. An intermediate, a T3, a T6, and a floater. I don't know why they give you a floater, but they do. And there's a pouch you can buy for it too. All made by Rio.
Yeah. Because that's a problem I'm starting to have. I mean, like, I've got I've got like 6 or 7 fly rods, I think,
Yeah,
of all
yeah.
different sizes, and that's okay. But
Right.
you start getting into, I've got a 6-way fly rod, and I got an intermediate line for it, and that's on a reel, and I got a floating line for it, and
Right.
that's on a reel.
Yeah.
And now Joe's talking about, oh, this teeny 250
Well,
thing is
that-
really
that-
good.
that's-
But do I gotta buy another reel?
I know. That's what I
I got
tried
more
this year.
reels than I got rods.
Well,
That's
that,
I went this route with like I'm saying, the only drawback is you really don't want that loop-to-loop connection with your floating line inside your guide. It's still cast, but you feel it. You feel this up when you cast.
okay.
So it takes some distance off of.
If we get together and do these, you're going to do a 5-foot sink tip, and you're going to do a 10-foot sink tip, and they'll have loops on each end. They will loop to your fly line, and then you put your leader out. But there's absolutely no reason to put even a 10-footer inside. And I think those Versa tips, aren't they longer, like 15 feet or something?
Yeah, they're like 15 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Which does create a problem that you might
Yeah.
have to put your loop in there. But a 10-footer or 5-footer, you never will. And
Right.
so you don't need another line to do that.
Right.
Those tips is all you need. As far as the 250, if I'm striper fishing, I'm throwing either 7-weight or 8-weight, and I'm always using sinking line. So I'm always using one of those 250s or a 300 or something like that, because that's where you want to be. If they're on the surface, obviously, you can use floating line. But I tell you, even with breaking fish, if you use a sink tip or sinking line, you'll catch bigger and better fish underneath of those smaller guys. So yeah, I mean, Gary, you're talking about all these different things you have. I do the same thing. I got a floater, I got an intermediate, and then I got these sink tips I always carry with me and in my leader wallet. And then if I'm salt watering, I got TS 250s or 300, or hell, if I'm throwing a 9-weight, I got a 350. Because it matches the line, the line weight. But yeah, if you want to do it all, it does require you to have some equipment. There's just no question about it. I mean, guys go up Deer Creek with split shot and flies, and I see them hang up more than anything, because the split shot gets hung up in the rocks. That line tends to be long, and it doesn't hang up as often, because it's just like a twig floating down the water underwater. So it works well. I mean, I just hate to put split shot on and watch that thing just tumble salt through the air. You got the fly up, the shots up, the flies up, the shots up, because it just boomerangs as it's going out there. And the sink tip is so much easier to handle. I mean, it really is. And you can cast the short ones just like you would a floating line. You don't need to make any adjustment. Now, when you're using long heads, you've got to make some adjustment. And maybe if we ever do our casting thing, maybe I'll bring a sinking line and show how you have to handle that line, because it's definitely different. But
Joe, we're gonna get together, we're gonna make those stink tips, and we're gonna tell Gary that suck it up, buddy, and buy some more reels.
yeah, or buy spools anyhow.
Yeah.
It's another, I'm sure everybody has the same problem, but the next one, I'm kind of learning. I'm moving into all these lines. I never had a whole lot of them before. And now it's like, I got all these reels in a box, and it's like, well, what the hell line's on that reel? You can't.
You got to mark
Is
them.
that a 7 or is it a 6?
You got to mark them. Here's a good way to do that. Go up above where your loop is, about 6 inches, 8 inches, and you put a magic marker. Take a magic marker and start a bar pattern. Like if it's a 6, just make a long line, okay, like 3/4 of an inch long, all the way around the line, and that'll designate your 6-weight. Okay, if you put a smaller line in front of it, just just around it. Now you got a 7. If you put 2, you got 8 and such, and you can go all the way up. If you're starting it, if you got a 3-weight rod or line, just put 3 little loops around it, and you can always tell that's a 3-weight.
That's
If it's a 4-weight, it's got 4. If it's a 5-weight, it'll have either 5 or I generally, let's see how I usually do that. I do. I think what I did is I used a long bar as a 3. So if it was a 6-weight, it would be 2 long bars. Okay, if it was a 7-weight, it'd be 2 long bars and 1 short
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
And
Oh,
the
that's
3-weight,
good.
so I don't care if the nomenclature washed off of my reel, my line still has
Yeah,
what line I have on it.
yeah.
Well, Joe, I appreciate the time this morning. It's really great.
Oh,
The only
good.
thing, I know when I fish, I like to keep the fly rod perpendicular, and then as it swings through, I'll start pulling back on it,
Mhm.
Right from the first guide,
Well, yeah, now
back
you're
up.
picking up speed.
And then pick up speed, and I'll pick it up all the way down if the water's running slow. But I'm intrigued by the whole concept, like Deer Creek has been a bummer for the last 4 or 5 years. And I don't know if it's my timing is bad or the water flow is just not driving the fish up there.
Last
It's,
year, I didn't
concerning.
fish it last year. I fished out in the river, but I didn't fish in Deer Creek. But I know guys that did and did really well. So evidently they did run last year.
Yeah. Okay. So it's probably late. I was probably too early and done at that point.
When do you go?
Well, it was like mid-April. And then,
There should have been some fish in there.
so I just have to go beat it some more, I guess.
Yeah. It's like any body of water. I tell guys, you can't go into a new body of water right away and expect to catch fish all the time. You got to
No.
learn it. And the more you go, the more you learn the little secrets of that particular body of water. I see it when all the guys used to go down the Concord, and we'd have a big group there, and I'd see some of them fishing it wrong, because it was the time of season. I know that hey, they're fishing in the wrong spot. And I think Rich and I talked about one time about going down and just talking with the guys as you went through a fishery. You got 2 or 3 guys and just say, try this, do that, because, and again, it's from spending time on the water and learning what these fish do. But the shad, if you can start fishing perpendicular to the stream, and do what I said about either mending downstream or just holding the rod right where you casted it, don't move it, and just let it belly out, you'll be surprised how many more shad you catch in a body of water you didn't even think had shad in it. Especially if you had a sink tip, so that you're getting down in their face. You got to get in their face. They're not up in the top of the water column. They're actually down really low to the bottom because there's not as much current down below. The fast
Hey,
water's
I
up
just
top.
wanted to tell you real quick, I don't know how much money you save with the Versa tips, because you do get 4 tips, but guess what? There's a set of tips for a 5-weight, there's a set of tips for 6, set of tips for 7-weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Pick your poison. Pick your poison. I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah. Use our ones that we're going to make up, and you won't have any problem. You throw them on any line. Right? I throw them on a 3-weight. So.
Hey, Joe, speaking of sink tips, could you talk us a little through the leaders used for hickories compared to Americans?
No change.
No change?
3 or 4
Okay.
foot of tippet, because I'm using sink tips.
Yep. So
Okay. For the hickories, I go down to a 6 pound. I think that's a 4. It's a 4X. Is that 4X? And then I do for the whites, I do as much as a 20. Need anywhere from 14 to 20. You're talking about, when you're fishing the main river, you got a heavier current, and you could have a fish of 5 or 6 pounds. So, and plus you got a lot of rocks that you're going around and all that stuff. So, yeah. But yeah, no leaders. If you're fishing a sink tip, you never need a leader. Well, I'll take that back. Sometimes you do, but for shad, no. The whole idea is to get the fly and the line down in front of their face, which is down near the bottom. So, and whites are no different. I mean, they're all down on the bottom. I mean, you know, I did a thing in my I think I did it in my smallmouth book about water, about how using strike indicators versus using a sink tip. And, you know, the first question I asked most people, I said, what's the fastest water in a river? And they kind of look at me and then I say, the top. I said, what's the slowest? The slowest is the bottom. And then there's something in between, you know? So when you're using a strike indicator up top and you're using a split shot and a fly down below, your indicators in the fastest water and your split shot and your flies in the slowest water. So that means somewhere's in between, you got this S-shaped line in the water. And for that strike indicator to go down, that fish has got to pick up that fly and hold it long enough for your strike indicator to go down. And with sink tips, you don't have that anymore. All you're doing is watching the loop. And for shad, you don't have to worry about it. They'll sock that thing. You know when you got a shad on, because they'll just shock that rod, and they hit it hard. So
Great. Thanks for your time. I got to run, gentlemen. It's
okay, buddy.
great
Yeah.
information, and we'll get out there soon.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
Thanks, Joe. I gotta go as well. Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
I'm going fishing after I get done this.
Hey, Joe, this is Bill Smith. Do you have the tying instructions for your shad fly on your website?
No. We just did that? Did that show up on our videos now?
No, we didn't get that one, but Bill, Joe's book that he's got up on his website does have both patterns and tells how to tie them.
But did not.
Bill, I can send it to you. I copied it down when we did it. I'll send you a copy, Bill.
Thank you.
Or you can buy my book.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, John, I was trying to get Joe a little business here, you know? We got Gary buying a whole bunch of reels. We needed Bill. Come on, guys.
Yeah, we need to have that clinic. I gotta get some used secondhand reels and things like that.
Yeah,
I need
There
more
was
stuff.
that's right, Christy.
Right.
We need to get Christy some rods, some reels, and some
All right. All
some
right.
sink tips.
Well, who decides?
You always need stuff.
I'm gonna
Oh,
build
yeah.
a shed in my backyard for my new fly equipment.
Well, your wives might have something to say about your stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. We do become collectors. No question about it.
Absolutely.
It's like, well, I mean, think of a guy that's bass fishing or something like that, and he's got 15 different rods, and he's got a different lure on every one of them.
And he's got a 500 horsepower glittery boat too.
Exactly. So that outweighs our fly lines. Our fly stuff doesn't cost that much at that point.
I lie awake at night worrying about when I'm gonna run out of that Icelandic wool, those pounds of stuff I have from when we tied it.
Well, if we ever
I
get
think I
together,
can
we'll
make a
have
pillow
more.
out of it.
Yeah, we'll have more. That's for
Gary,
sure.
you need more colors, so hold on there, buddy.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah,
we break up here, any additional questions for Joe before he goes out fishing and the rest of us go out and do our stuff?
No, but I do for you, Rich.
Okay.
Our illustrious governor has loosened up a lot of things. So do you anticipate that we might be able to have a real live together meeting at the clubhouse in the near future?
I think we're getting there. That's up to Gary and the rest of the team, but I think we're getting close. If they're going to open up those vaccines and stuff, I'd imagine we've got, in the June time period, we certainly have got several hands-on things, and we want to try to get another swap meet.
Certainly the outdoor stuff is something we can do. And we had talked in our last meeting, I guess it was, or the one before that, about having a swap meet, but doing it with a couple of criteria. One, not advertising it to the public, just try to keep the numbers down, make it just a club member kind of thing, and doing it outside, carrying the tables outside, and seems like a pretty safe way to approach that. Our June meeting is the casting clinic, that's outside. My concern is I don't want to, given that we can't televise or stream, I guess is the better word, we can't stream a meeting. once we decide to have a meeting back in person, anyone that's concerned about attending it for COVID reasons is just out in the cold. I mean, they'll just totally miss it. So I want to make sure that when we do go back to meeting in person, we've got, a substantial majority of the club members. So
Could you still do the Zoom meeting and still have one in person? That way they have the option of doing Zoom or in person?
well, the problem is we don't have reception at the clubhouse, so we can't stream or Zoom from there.
Got
You
it.
got like a one bar reception or something like
Mhm.
that, and it's very hard to.
I have a club question. What is the story with regard to the meeting that was held about about fishing the North Branch of the Potomac in that area, which was, I was not able to attend it, and some other people had requested information as to whether or not